Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Chiefs Roundtable session. We certainly appreciate everyone being here this morning and joining. We have some other folks that are joining in. This is a monthly program that we have agreed to assist the North Carolina Association of Fire Chiefs with during October, November, and December. We thank all of you who were able to come last month and participate. Last month, we were focused on looking at some of the strategic planning objectives and initiatives. Today, we're going to be looking at professional development, and we'll share with you some of the components that we have today. Several members of our North Carolina Fire Chief Consulting team are with us today, and we'll give an opportunity for them to speak a little bit later. We also have some special guests with us today, Chief Dan Jones and Kelly Walsh. We welcome both of you today, and we'll be calling on you here later this morning. So with that, let me just kind of give some information as we get started, and we'll go right into the presentation. We do try to keep these within a tight timetable each morning. We know your schedule is busy, so we'll try to make sure our information is contained within about 30 minutes, and then we're here to answer questions as long as needed. Questions are welcome. You are welcome to turn on the chat and send any question in that you would like. I'll try to facilitate this, so as we get through the discussion, and for example, you have questions with Chief Jones or Ms. Walsh, you can ask those, and I'll be glad to make sure that those get answered today. So feel free to use the chat. We are recording this and allowing it to be shared with the Association of Fire Chiefs on their website. So make sure that everyone knows that here in the beginning. All right, that being said, we want to jump right in and begin looking at a couple things about professional development today. And we'll take an opportunity to share just a little bit of background if you did not join us last month. And like, what is this? What's going on with this this program? We're going to give you an opportunity to learn a little bit more about that today as well. So we're going to start out with that here this morning and learn a little bit more about what we're trying to do with this initiative. And then we'll jump right into some of the professional development pieces. Hopefully you can see that okay on your screen, and you're able to see our presentation here today. And again, this is going to be on the North Carolina Association of Fire Chiefs site. We want to thank the Association of Fire Chiefs, Executive Director Jay Quisnett, and all of the board for allowing us to provide this educational opportunity each month. Our interest and purpose of this roundtable session is simply to educate and inform the fire service in North Carolina. We do try to keep these brief each month. But we want to have some discussion on topics that you have said are important to you. And we will touch this frequently to make sure that we're providing information that you feel like is valuable. And it's very helpful just to learn from each other and what's happening across our state from Murphy to Manteo. So we did have a number of people participate in a survey, and these first three programs are completely driven off of that survey regarding the day of the week and the time and the topics that we are covering. And we thank everyone who helped to provide input into that. We did cover strategic planning last month. We're talking a little bit about professional development this month. And next month, we're going to be looking at fire station location and station location planning. Those were some of the top topics that you said you'd like information on, and we're very honored to be able to provide that. Again, North Carolina Fire Chief Consulting is a consulting provider. We work North Carolina almost exclusively. We have an excellent group of about 10 fire chiefs that are throughout North Carolina and have very diverse experience and leadership and many years of service in North Carolina's fire service. And we basically provide assistance to any type of fire consulting program or question that's needed. We are the North Carolina League of Municipalities fire consulting provider, and so we assist cities and counties throughout North Carolina. And here's just a few of the clients that we have recently served throughout North Carolina. You may see a city or county near you, and so we try to assist as many folks as need help throughout our great state. Everything that we work on really in our whole effort with NC Fire Chief Consulting is around continuous improvement. And when we think about today's topic, and we think about professional development, it too is about continuous improvement. And so that model is very important to us, and hopefully it's important to you, or you probably wouldn't be here today to learn. And so always working to improve, seeing what you're doing, making changes, reevaluating, reviewing, and continually looking of how you can improve and your organization can improve. So it's important we just kind of touch base that that's a foundational principle in everything that we talk about and all the different projects that we assist cities and counties with in North Carolina. Today, we're going to be looking at professional development, and we're going to touch just on a few pieces of this. Obviously, that's a really big topic, and we're going to try to cover some important pieces within about a 30-minute time period. We're going to talk today about 360 feedback. That may be a professional development venue or tool that you haven't used before. So we're going to talk a little bit about what happens with a 360 feedback. We're going to discuss doing a departmental survey. We have assisted some departments with that, and they have reported how helpful it is. So we're going to share that with you. We're going to talk about the concept of what we'll call a department audit today as well, related to professional development. And then last, we're going to talk about officer training and education, and we're going to focus with the Brave Fire Leader program that Chief Jones and Kelly Walsh are here with us today to talk about. So those are the four areas that we're going to touch on. Each of those will be brief, but we'll just provide a little information about that. And then again, as we come to the end, we'll be glad to answer questions that you might have about any of those topics. Over on the right-hand side, hopefully you can see in your screen, this is Mike Legaris is a great historian, and he does a lot for the fire service across our state. And I found this that he has recently posted. It goes up through the pandemic time period anyway. But Mike has done a really nice job in so many ways of capturing the history of our fire service. But I thought it was an appropriate photo to use when we talk about professional development. When you think about how much the fire service in North Carolina has changed, when you he goes all the way back to 1887. But even in these most recent years, you'll see the 90s, the 2000, 2010, all those things that have changed during that period of time. So has professional development for the fire service and fire service leaders. And so we will frame this today around professional development, particularly for the fire chief, deputy chief, and executive command staff of any fire department. And this applies to any size department across North Carolina, whether you're an urban municipal department, you are a combination department or a volunteer department. It really applies to all of those. So let's start and talk about 360 just a little bit. That is a type of evaluation that some fire service leaders have had a part of and others have not. We find it to be a really good tool and something we want to make you aware of that's there that can bring some good information. Sometimes people are a little bit standoffish about having a 360 evaluation. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to get back. Maybe I want to be careful asking the question. I might not like the response I get. But after we have had the opportunity to work with someone on a 360, we find out that it's beneficial, especially what you're able to derive from that. And so when a 360 evaluation, really the intent of that is to have you evaluate yourself, the person being evaluated. And I'll give the example of the fire chief. And you'll know who that is. And obviously it's you. If you're the fire chief, you're doing a feedback on how you perceive yourself. The tool we use is an electronic instrument, and it's made by a company called Profiles International. And it's a validated instrument, and it's very effective. And so it's an electronic type assessment where you're asked these questions and you're able to tell how you see yourself. Well, you extend that to whoever your supervisor is or supervisors. So if you're a municipal fire chief, as an example, it might be the city manager, town manager, it might be the assistant manager, whoever you report to. Your boss is identified in that, and you'll know who they are, and they know that you'll know who they are. So you're looking for some things with alignment. Are you and your supervisor in alignment? And so it's going to ask the supervisor those same types of questions that give feedback on you. They'll do some ratings, and they'll also have an opportunity to put some comments in. Then it goes to the next level, and that's your direct reports. Who are the people that report directly to you? That's a very important group too. What are their perceptions? What do they see in your performance day to day? And what are some things that they observe as strengths, and also what do they observe as opportunities? We also include in that colleagues. Those might be other department directors, it might be other fire chiefs, it might be neighboring departments. We really try to figure out who are the best people that are the colleagues that you work with on a regular basis that can give good feedback and insight into your performance. And we reach out to them. And there's another group that you can identify. I'll call that a custom identification. If you have an additional group, for example, in a larger department, maybe the direct reports might be assistant chiefs or deputy chiefs, but they may want to reach out and say, I'd like to see where my battalion chiefs are with this. And so we may form a group with battalion chiefs. But all those groups provide feedback. And this instrument's really neat because it's able to show you how you perceive yourself compared to your boss, compared to your direct reports, compared to colleagues and other groups. And you're able to see that in a number of different dimensions. And so we find that that's a good professional development tool. You really need to have between 3 people and 11 people in each group. Those are the ideal numbers. You have to have at least 3 to make it statistically valid, and you can have up to 11. And so the way that that works is you just have, you provide email addresses of those people. We usually go a notice to them saying, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, here's what we need you to do. And then they get that electronically, they fill it out, we come back, and then we're able to kind of analyze that and provide good feedback for the fire chief or the deputy chief, whoever may be taking this information, and help them to see what's next and what are some next steps. These are some of the areas that they're able to look at. It's communication, leadership, adaptability, relationships, task management, production, development of others, and personal development. Those are the areas that the questions are based around. There's about 70 questions in the instrument that we use, and it's able to really distinguish all 8 of those areas within those 70 questions. And so when you think about what do I get out of this? What's my deliverables? Well, you get an individual report and you also get a management report. Now, the reports will identify you and they will identify your supervisor, but they do not identify the colleagues who said what, that type thing. They do not identify the direct reports or the other group. So those, because there's 3 or more, those are looked at really collectively. What does this collective group say? And some of us have to face reality sometimes. This is what the group's saying, so this is a perception, but it could become a reality, so I need to address that. So one of the great tools that this instrument helps provide is it provides areas of focus, is what it's called. There's so many things that we could be giving attention to and working on. This instrument helps you to be able to say, these are the areas of focus for me. These are the things I need to work on the most in an individual development plan for me, a professional development plan. These are the things I need to do. And so I'm just gave a photo over here of just one little slice of this, where you'll see some of these the column on the left-hand side with some of the dimensions. But you'll see that in this particular example for this person, communicating effectively, adjusting to circumstances, and also working competently were areas of focus. So it will always determine what the 3 most important areas of focus should be. So here's where I need to put my attention, type thing. And so it's really helpful. It's a tool that's available that helps with professional development. I'll even call it somewhat maybe a non-traditional tool for some organizations, but I think one that in every time we have used it is seen to be very effective. The next type of model that we would say is and maybe somewhat again of a non-traditional tool for professional development. It's along the theory or concept of a 360, but it goes beyond that. And that's a departmental survey. The questions in a departmental survey are relatively simple. It asks, what does the chief need to keep doing? What does the chief need to stop doing? What does the chief need to start doing? So think about this. If you ask all your line personnel in the department those questions, you can think about the types of responses you might get. And so those are really open, and we will usually do some additional questions with that are specific to the department or maybe needs of the department at the time. But the questions, again, are simple but meaningful. What do I need to keep doing as a leader? What do I need to keep doing? What do I need to stop doing? What's ineffective? What do I need to stop doing? And then what do I need to start doing that I may not be aware of? So it's always very interesting to me in seeing, the types of responses. We did this with a pretty large department to all the membership. We had about a 50% of the department replied, so it was pretty well received. We provided the fire chief back with over 100 pages, literally over 100 pages of responses on what he needed to keep doing, stop doing, and start doing. So that was for that chief was some professional development. It was a way to get feedback from his personnel in a way that was meaningful to him, and some things that he did not know or didn't know that was out in the organization. So it's some of a pulse check on the organization as well. So that's another type of professional development tool that is there that may be somewhat non-traditional, but certainly very effective. The large department I mentioned earlier, the chief was so pleased to being able to have that kind of information that he was able to distinguish from what he thought the response might be to what the response really was. And it helped him really form some strategic plans for the organization as well. The next example I'll give is that we are currently involved with a department is a department audit. And that is really, it was based upon how's the fire chief performing. And in order to determine how the fire chief is performing, the question was asked, how does our department stack up against standards, best practices, benchmarking? If the department is performing well, then the fire chief's performing well, is the way this particular department saw that. And we've got a quote here from Edwards Deming: without data, you're just another person with an opinion. So it gives you some data and backing. This particular department is a combination department. They have a board of directors. And so that board wanted to dig a little deeper and see how's the department performing. And they were tying that back to the performance evaluation for the fire chief. So again, that's a different way to look at that. Many of you may be involved in the accreditation effort, so you're familiar with many of those types of standards and benchmarks and data and that type thing. But we are seeing interest from departments that say, as we look at how we're evaluating our leadership, how does the department perform? So how are the leaders leading? Are they doing the right things? Are there areas that need attention more than others? And so a departmental audit is a type of professional development tool that's available as well. And then the program we wanted to spend most of our time with here today is a little bit more traditional in format, but Chief Dan Jones and Miss Kelly Walsh are with us here today, and they are doing some really good work across the United States relative to professional development. I've had some questions here recently from some fire service leaders across North Carolina, and as I've answered them, I said, well, I think what you're asking for is exactly what Chief Jones and Kelly Walsh are doing. And I think in this pandemic period, we've all been challenged to know how do we get the professional development that we need? How are we able to do that when we can't travel? We've got so many restrictions, those type of situations at hand. And so I've had the honor of knowing Chief Jones for 25 plus years, and he has done some really good work. A former fire chief, retired chief from Chapel Hill, along with Ms. Kelly Walsh. They have developed a program will allow them to speak here. You'll see their Brave Fire Leader Academy logo. And then you're also going to see an IFC logo there. And part of that is that they have partnered with the IFC. I'll let them explain that. But the two of these folks are working nationally around professional development, and they're doing that within the pandemic. And so the questions I've had recently is we really need to do this officer development. We really need to do this chief officer development, but we're struggling through the pandemic. So I asked both Chief Jones and Ms. Walsh to be with us today to share a little bit about the Brave Fire Leader program and how they're doing that virtually. So Chief Jones, Kelly, welcome. And thank you for being here with us today on Chiefs Roundtable.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate the invitation. Let me start just by giving you a little background on how we started this program. I retired from Chapel Hill 5 years ago after serving there for 25 years as their fire chief, including a 41-year fire service career. And when I retired, one of the things that I felt strongest about was the need to give back to the fire service and the fact that we really had not done a good job of preparing our officers. And Kelly also has a background in human relations, and she worked for 10 years with Chief Dennis Compton in Mesa, Arizona, as their embedded HR person. And so she has a lot of experience in public safety as well as in the private sector. Chief Compton arranged to introduce us when I retired, and Kelly and I began to talk about issues of leadership in the fire service. And we spent almost a year sitting at either her dining room table or my dining room table, basically putting together materials and programs that we felt were important and were missing. One of the things that we agreed on both strongly, we don't agree on everything, because she's HR and I'm from the fire chief's office, and you guys know how that works. But one of the things we agreed on strongly was that we do a great job of preparing people for fire ground command, incident command, decision making on the fire ground, problem solving on the fire ground. What we don't prepare people very well for is how to deal with all the rest of the job of a fire officer or a chief officer. The personnel issues, the administrative issues, the politics, the budget issues, dealing with perspectives outside the fire department. Kelly and I did a panel discussion a few years ago with a group of fire chiefs in Virginia. And this was a panel discussion. The fire chiefs ranged from large metro departments to smaller departments, and all were fairly new to the fire chief business. And Kelly asked them what surprised them most about the role of fire chief when they took on that role. And they unanimously agreed that marketing was the biggest issue that they were surprised by, and that they spent an awful lot of time and energy in marketing their fire department to citizens, to elected officials, to other agencies. We don't talk about marketing at all when we're preparing people for command positions, and yet that becomes a big part of the job of a fire chief or a senior chief officer. Our fire stations, we promote people to lieutenant or captain or whatever you call that first line supervisor. We put them in a fire station with a group of employees or volunteers, and we make them responsible and we put them in charge. But what have we really taught them in the way of people skills and dealing with personnel problems? And we talk about liability in the fire service sometimes, and we think about liability on the fire ground and response liability and stuff. But the liability in a fire station and the way you handle employees or volunteers or paid on call personnel may be an even greater liability. And the little bit of money that you spend on teaching your officers good personnel management and personnel leadership issues pales in comparison to what it could cost you in a lawsuit for poor leadership. So that's where Kelly and I got started, and we have been delivering our programs around the country. We've done leadership academies. Basically, we started in Virginia, and we've been to Texas and Oklahoma and Washington State and California and Arizona. I can't even remember, Tennessee and Kentucky. We've been all over the country, basically. Then COVID happened. And as all of you are very well aware, COVID made it very difficult for us to deliver programs. It made travel almost impossible. A lot of fire departments can't send their people, can't travel. Budgets are tight. They can't gather personnel together in a training room or a classroom or a teaching auditorium somewhere. And Kelly and I just kind of pivoted our business, and we had prepared some videotapes with a live audience with the Durham Fire Department, the Apex Fire Department, the Carborough Fire Department. Pardon, Kelly?
I just was saying Carborough. Go ahead.
Carborough. We videotaped our programs, kind of condensed versions of our programs in Durham. And when the COVID hit, we were able to just pivot and use those videotapes and do online programs and deliver it in several different fashions. And so we have a variety of programs that we can offer. We don't talk about smoke and flames. We don't train people for fire ground command. We train people for dealing with personnel issues, political issues, budget issues, city hall issues, county commission issues, all of the things that can come back to cause us heartache when we haven't prepared properly. Kelly, you want to talk a little bit about how those programs are delivered?
Yeah, I'll show you a picture. Give me a sec here. Okay, whoops, that is wrong. That's not what I wanted. Let me try this again. Here we go. Okay, so just a little, visuals help sometimes. We've done work for regions, like IFC Southwest region has an academy every year. Regions, states, whatever. This is a picture of, and it's elaborate as this, where Virginia State Fire Chiefs has a big graduation ceremony on the campus of University of Virginia when it's finished. So that's kind of a big end of the program. Live. This is the exam. This is some things you'll see in a live academy, some desk work, but also a lot of group work, activities to bring learning points home. And everybody sit in the shoes of a fire chief or a chief officer at a table resolving a problem. So it's just a little example of some of the things that are happening live. And then when we pivoted to online, we had already had everything taped. We have it in a learning management system. And so we immediately moved and in June started doing online work. So this is a group of folks I just screenshotted so you can get a feel for what the format is. And we just use Zoom. They watch a video, approximately 30 minutes every week, and then we get together for enhanced learning. Now the options are to do self-paced. If this cohort doesn't work for somebody, they can be self-paced, but we don't charge anything extra to do the cohort. People have liked the cohort because it gives them some of the things that they missed from live training. They expand their network, and we do enhanced learning activities. And so it just gives a chance for a little more connection, a little more clarification, a little more interesting discussion.
And Kelly, let me add to this. The cohorts are very interesting because just in this picture alone, there are fire officers from all 4 time zones in the United States in this picture. So you get the same networking effect with a cohort that you would get by, say, attendance at the National Fire Academy, where you have the opportunity to connect and interact with people from other fire departments, other regions all across the country. This particular cohort that has been running for the last couple of months includes people from departments as large as Charleston, South Carolina, and as small as a volunteer fire department in northern Arizona.
Hondo Volunteer Fire Department in New Mexico.
Mexico, yeah. So they get that benefit. They work together. They have accountability partners that they can work with and develop their networks, just like you would if you attended a national conference or the National Fire Academy.
So that's kind of the rough overview of what we've been doing. We've been doing it for 5 years. We're still busy. In fact, we just got a contract with the United Nations. We're going to be working with some folks and some of their international fire departments. So there's a lot. We've been doing a lot of things and loving it along the way, and really focused on just the development for company officers, chief officers, and those aspiring to those levels. Sometimes in class we'll have a fire chief and we'll have a firefighter who's just really ambitious. And so they all learn from each other. So that's kind of what we've been doing. And we'd love to hear from you what your needs are. So maybe we can, target our conversation a little better.
One last point, Kelly. Our program is divided into 2 sections. Each section has 10 classes. The first level is really aimed at company officers and deals with things like communication skills and understanding generational differences in your employee. Mentoring and coaching. Being able to do employee assessments, different ways of doing employee assessments and evaluation.
Leadership styles.
The second set of classes, the second 10 classes, is aimed at chief officer level, and it deals with more senior command things like dealing with politics and being able to manage and run a meeting, an effective meeting. A lot of us get promoted to chief officer, and we've never chaired a meeting in our life, and now we find that we're the guy running the meetings, or we've never done a budget in our life, or even seen the budget, and the chief walks in and drops it on your desk. You're the new assistant chief, and says, "Chief, you're doing the budget this year," and you've never even had a chance to see it before. So we try to touch on those kinds of subjects.
Legal liability for HR management. It is amazing as we travel the country how few people have been trained on what their duty to act is. And that is a huge liability if people don't know what to do when something goes awry, there's a conflict or a remark flies by. That's not okay to happen at work.
One of the interesting things that happens in our classes is we always ask how many people have been trained in what your state law requires for employee stuff. And very, very rarely has anybody had training in how state law affects their role as a supervisor.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you so much for sharing about the Brave Fire Leader program and the great progress you're making. I think that pivot to online is something that is of a lot of interest to fire chiefs across the state right now as they develop themselves. And as they work to develop their deputies and assistants, and as you noted, the importance of company officers as well. So thank you for
Greg,
sharing.
let me just add one additional thing. Because of COVID, we recognize a lot of fire departments are struggling budget-wise right now. And so we're offering a COVID special of 40% off of our tuition costs. Right now, it's 40% off of the individual classes and 40% off of the full program if you want to go through the full program. You can choose just to go through level 1 or level 2, or you can go through the entire program. And or we can prepare something specifically for your fire department if you want to do that and not go through we've had fire departments put their own program together with us and run all their officers through it. So we've done that as well. You can contact us either on our Brave Fire Leader website, bravefireleader.com, or contact Steve Matzat, who is really our business manager, happens to be Kelly's husband. Steve, you can reach him at 408-386-5093. That's 408-386-5093. And Steve can discuss options with you and scheduling and that sort of thing. Thank you, Greg.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we've talked about 4 different areas today. We've talked about the 360 for the chief officers. We've talked about a Departmental Survey. We've talked about a Departmental Audit, and now we've spoken about the Brave Fire Leader program. We've had the pleasure of working with some departments who have done all of those. We have had departments that have done the 360, the survey. They've looked at some pieces of the audit, and then a component of that was training their command staff. And Dan and Kelly have helped with that. So it really went full circle in using all the tools that we have been able to share with you today. We have a number of our North Carolina Fire Chief Consulting team here with us today. All of our members are here with the exception of Chief Arnell from Rocky Mount. He was not able to be here today, but Wayne Hamilton from Asheville, Todd Tuttle from Greensboro, Chris Perry from Zebulon, David Bullens from Statesville, Frank Blackley from Wilmington, Wes Hutchins from Forsyth County, and Wes Green was with us as well. So all of those gentlemen are with us today, and we'll be glad to take questions that you might have of any of our NC Fire Chief Consulting team or Chief Jones and Ms. Walsh. You can send those in by chat, or if you'd like, you're welcome to unmute and share a question, and our entire team will be glad to assist you with anything that you might have questions about. So let's take a moment to do that. Either, again, send something in on chat, or you can unmute and share a question. We'll be glad to try to assist. As we are waiting on somebody to respond, any member of our NC Fire Chief Consulting team that would like to unmute and share anything in addition, welcome to do that. You're welcome to do that as well.
Chief Grayson.
Yes, Chief Perry.
I just offer, just if I might, this pandemic, many of us are dealing with it in obviously different ways, and it's often seen as a hindrance or an obstacle. If I could, I'd like to offer the challenge to each one of us to take this pandemic as an opportunity. We've been forced to utilize technologies that take us outside of our comfort zone. In something exactly what we're doing through today. But I think there's a lot of opportunity there because we've created avenues where we can network, remain engaged with each other much easier in some respects than we have in the past. You take that with the opportunities, just as Chief Jones has explained, their services are available now in a new format, even at a reduced cost. I just see a lot of opportunities that we can potentially make something positive out of something that has been very, very impactful on the fire service. So I challenge everybody to look for those more positive aspects and take advantage of it. There's training we can get now online and without travel included that we could have never gotten before. So I challenge everybody to take advantage of that.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate it.
Can I follow up to that, Chief Grayson? Interestingly, the IAFC contacted us after they had some grant money for volunteer departments, and they send people to conferences. Well, there were no conferences this year, and so they called us, and we're doing an academy of 40 volunteer students. And what was interesting about that is they're kind of having that recognition that Chief Perry was saying, that they could have only sent a few people before because of the costs and the backfills and the flights and all the expenses that go along with traveling. It wasn't the tuition that was expensive, it was everything else. They could have only sent a handful of people, and now they're training 40. So I think things like that are going to start happening where people are going to say, what can we do how much more can we do for the money with these different setups? So just a thought.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Any other members of NC Fire Chief team that would like to speak today?
Chief Grayson, I'd like to add on to what Chief Perry said. If you're part of the LinkedIn group, a lot of LinkedIn learning that not specifically geared toward the fire services, but geared toward all types of leadership and management, and great opportunities. I think Chief Perry hit it pretty well, that those opportunities are out there. So just some thoughts.
Yeah, so just another avenue of professional development.
Yeah, actually, Wes and Greg, LinkedIn is one of the ways that we got the recent connection with the UN, the United Nations, to provide training to support personnel in Africa. They're working for the UN. So LinkedIn is a great way to identify some resources and connect with others.
Good. Good. All right. Any questions anyone of our attendees have here today? We do plan to be back next month, the same week and time. We've been following the request from the survey. And so next month, we're going to be looking at fire station locations. And how do you do fire station locations? What are the data points? How does the GIS system work? What are the components that we look at in determining station locations? We're blessed throughout our state to have a number of municipalities that are looking at adding stations, and some private and nonprofit corporation fire departments that are looking to add stations. So we're going to step through that process with you next month. We encourage you to be back. We'll have notifications coming out through the Association of Fire Chiefs again. We appreciate your dedication and public service and serving the great people of North Carolina. Thank you for allowing us to join you here today with NC Fire Chief Consulting, as well as Chief Jones and Ms. Walsh with Brave Fire Leader Academy. Stay safe in what you do. Take care, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month here back at the Fire Chiefs Roundtable.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Yeah.